Welcome to All Things Financial with Jack Driscoll. Each week, Jack takes on all things you thought were hard to understand about your finances and makes it fun, easy, but most of all interesting. From insurance to the best way to save your money and squeeze the most out of the dollars you put aside for your rainy day. And now, you have a friend in the money business. Here's your host, Jack Driscoll.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of All Things Financial. You know, across the weeks and months and years that I practice and talk with people, sometimes I get into conversations and people will say, why hasn't anybody ever told me that before? So I thought what I would do on this week's show is talk about a couple of those topics that came up within the last week that we got that response. Why hasn't anyone told us that before? And some of these things seem so simple. Some of them you'd wonder, other people everybody ought to maybe know this, or somebody ought to have told us this. So I just thought today I'd share some of these bits of information that either I've shared with other people or they've asked, why hasn't anyone told us this before? Because maybe they're things that can help you too. So for all of you listeners and all of you viewers, this show, as all of my shows, is for you. The first one was, there is an opportunity to save on some of the insurances, especially the car insurance, if you take a defensive driver course and you're over age 55. So that's what came up. The first thing that came up is somebody said, why hasn't anyone told me I could save money on my car insurance if I take this defensive driver course? And we never thought about it. I've talked about it in prior shows, but just touched on it. And so I'm touching on it again today because I was prompted by that statement, why hasn't anyone told us that before? I was assuming, you know what, I bet a lot of other people either heard it and forgot it, or maybe we're age 45 when they heard it and now we're 55, and you say, hey, it's pertinent. So I'm reminding everyone, at age 55 or older, if you take a defensive driving course, and you can Google that and find out where, you can call your current insurance carrier, the car insurance carrier, and ask them, hey, do you give a discount for taking a defensive driving course? And if they say yes, you'd ask, okay, how much is it? And I'm going to clue you in on something. Some companies give a discount on only your liability insurance portion of the premium. Some companies give a discount of up to 5% on the whole premium. So pay attention when they give you the answer. Is it 5%? Oh, okay. On what? The whole premium, or is it just certain lines of coverages? And then I want you to also ask the question, what if myself and my spouse get the defensive driver course? Is it a double benefit, or is it only 5% off the policy for the first one who gets it? Because that is many times the case. So find out before you do it. It's of benefit to you. I think most of the people I've talked to that have taken the defensive driving course, you could do them online, you could do them at an actual on-site, you could contact AARP, you can contact a lot of different places for it, but I would just Google it and ask the insurance company, are there different discounts for different courses, and do they have a recommendation on a course? So it's easy to do. I think once you take that, I think it lasts for a period of time longer than 1 year. I don't know if it's 2 years or 5 years. It probably depends per company, and I don't even know myself. But I do know there's a discount with almost every company. So that was one point that I thought I would share with everyone, because it came up last week. They said, why hasn't anyone told us about this? So now I am. I run into these, why hasn't anyone told me before, this week when I got into a discussion on, are all your arrangements in order? I got hit with it when I got through this discussion of, are your wills up to date? And the question was answered with, well, no, they're older. And then we went and looked through all the different details, and we found out all the beneficiaries. In fact, I posed the question. I'll start with this. I said, we need to look at all the beneficiaries on your IRAs, your pensions, your annuities, your life insurance. And they said, they're all going to be up to date. We don't need to do that. And I said, well, it's part of my practice. It's part of my process. So we're going to do it anyway. And please bring in all the information and we'll go through step by step. And we actually call each of those institutions, the life insurance company, the pensions, the 401ks, the IRAs, who are the beneficiaries? And you know what? Doggone it. We found every one of them was the mom of the husband before he was married, who's now passed away. And one of them was before any kids were born, so they didn't have the kids on there. They had brothers and sisters as contingent beneficiaries. It was a mess, right? That's why we do the process. So why I'm bringing this up is it's an issue of my question actually coming across on why isn't anybody doing this already? So that's the first thing. And when we got through that process with this week's appointments, one of the people, when I brought up what I'm going to bring up in a second to all of you, they were in shock and they said, why hasn't anyone told us this? It wasn't about the beneficiaries. Here's what it was. We were talking about probate, avoiding probate. Do we have to pay tax if anything happens to us going into, our kids and all this? And we got into this issue and I explained life insurance goes directly to the named beneficiaries. That avoids probate. IRAs have named beneficiaries. Annuities have named beneficiaries. So what we were talking about was, well, if we get our will updated, does that correct all of this? The wills don't correct any of that. The wills correct the beneficiaries and the heirs listed that your house and your contents and things not controlled by beneficiaries go to. But if your beneficiaries are all messed up, the will doesn't even supersede that or even control that. So we get into this, and I was talking about beneficiary type accounts actually avoid probate. And wills, anything that transfers through the wills, actually go through the process of probate. So we got through that whole discussion, and then I said, now your bank accounts, because there was a large amount in one of the bank accounts because there was an inheritance and that money was still sitting there. And I said, you need that in a TOD account. And they said, huh? What? I said, you need that in a TOD account, transfer on death, to avoid probate. You don't have any beneficiaries listed on that account at all. And we just talked about your will is old. So until it's fixed, it's what controls that account. And that's when the question came, why hasn't anyone told me that before? So I decided to bring it out on the radio show and the videos so that I am hoping that a lot of you who have not been told that before are being told that now. They said, how do we do it? And I said, you just go into your bank. There's a card that you could fill out on your account. You don't have to change accounts. And it's a transfer on death designation. You fill it out just like beneficiaries. And presto, if anything happens to you now, those assets go directly to the beneficiaries. So the next thing I told those people, and I'll tell all of you too, is get to your attorney. I don't give legal advice. I help share and shed light on where there is a need possibly to get to an attorney, to get legal advice, to fix all of this stuff. So I don't do that. What I do is illustrate if there's a problem. Why hasn't anyone told us this before? And get you to run to your attorneys. It's a quick fix. You ask your attorney, do I need TOD accounts on my bank? Do I need to change the beneficiaries? Who should my beneficiaries be? Because that's really a legal matter, not a financial matter. Make sure they all line up and the wills, and you're done, and it's fixed. And then when you go on vacation, if anything happens, you don't have to worry, everything's in place. So that was the next one on why hasn't anyone told me this before that I wanted to share with all of you. On this issue of transfer on death and wills and beneficiaries, why do we care? Well, the majority of the reason is we want to get our assets, we want to make sure our assets get to the right people should anything happen to us, right? And keep the courts and the government out of it and get it to the right people. The second concern we have a lot of times is we want to get it to the right people quickly. And the third issue most people have a concern with is we want to get it to the right people and avoid as much tax and fees and all these outsiders of getting any portion of it. So a lot of that is avoidance, is called avoidance of probate. This issue of transfer on death designations, beneficiary, and all, the reason we want everything having a designation, not only to get directly to the people we want, but to also avoid probate, deals with this phantom issue and concept of what is probate. So basically, it's something that you take up with your attorneys, but I can give you a brief description of it. Probate is when anybody passes away, normally the heirs present the will, the executor, executrix presents the will to the courts, and they have to go through this process called probate, which is down at the Prothonotari's office and the Registrar of Wills, and the attorneys required, and they charge fees, and there's probate fees, and there are delays. The courts make the estate wait 6 to 9 months before they can even distribute assets, and creditors can come and make claims. Disgruntled heirs, brothers, sisters, kids that have been disowned, they come back in and fight. I should have some of that. Don't pay attention to mom's will, dad's will. They didn't know what they were doing. They were coerced late in life. All that's the process of probate. These other assets with named beneficiaries, IRAs, 401ks, transfer on death designation, on bank accounts, it can also be put on mutual funds and most other assets like that, avoid probate. So pretty much assets with a beneficiary designation listed on the asset transfers by the beneficiary designation directly and avoids probate. So you'll run into that even with houses. The attorneys will tell us with a husband and wife, a house, if the husband dies, automatically transfers by deed, they'll tell us. And a lot of the attorneys will caution us when we get maybe a widow late in life who's concerned, she's concerned about a widow or widower might be concerned, if anything happens to me, will nursing homes get the house? Well, we want to add our kid's name on, they'll say, to protect that house. And a lot of attorneys caution us. They say, yes, there are benefits, but number one, what if there are 4 children? If the widow dies, the house goes to the one child that was on there by deed. So that's a problem, they say. And then another problem the attorneys say is, what if that other child whose name is on the deed gets divorced or is in a car accident or goes bankrupt? That's an asset now of that child, a partial asset because their name's on the deed. Could they lose the house on the mom and the mom gets kicked out of the house who never ended up going into a nursing home? So by trying to solve one problem, created numerous other problems. And so what we say as financial planners is get to an attorney. Don't ask us those questions. That's legal advice. But we shed light on there are numerous problems with those issues. And you might want to avoid probate. You might want to avoid probate through deed or through beneficiary designations. But the attorney may say, hey, we want to do a living trust instead, a revocable living in trust to avoid probate, or we don't want you to worry about avoiding probate at all. But that's what the process of probate is. That's why people talk about all these different areas. And my advice to you on this show is the same thing. Get to an attorney, get to your attorney, discuss all these questions that you heard on this show, and say, why hasn't anybody told us this before? And then resolve those in your own situation. There's an issue in the summer mainly, but it's year-round. A lot of people travel in the winter that I think isn't being talked about a lot. And I did get asked a question about 2 weeks ago. What do we do? And it's really when we go on vacation, we're planning on renting a car. Our old standby advice for years and years and years was easy advice. It was, don't take the insurance when you rent a car. Your personal auto insurance automatically extends to that rental car. And the deductible that you have in collision and comprehensive on your personal policies apply to the rental car. So if you want to buy the deductible damage waiver, that's up to you. That was our standard advice. And that advice stood until we learned otherwise. And the reason we learned otherwise, and that advice is no longer valid, by the way, the reason that advice changes is because the rental agencies over the years changed their legal contracts that you sign when you rent a car, now requiring you to be liable for things such as if you damage their car and you turn it back in, or their car is stolen. You assume, and in the old days it was this way, you're no longer liable for the remainder of the rental term that you had, or beyond the rental term that you had. So if you had 3 days rental, that's fine. You might owe that 3 days, but their contracts changed. And they said, you took that car out of commission. We now have lost the ability to rent that car for the next 30 days or 20 days or whatever it is. And we're holding you liable for the lost income that car would have generated to us. And what they do is they max, you know how you have to swipe a credit card when you rent a car? Well, guess what? There have been actual cases where immediately they max out your credit card. They put a hold on your credit card to the maximum limit to hold against, because they can't run out the car. And you say, what are you doing? And they say, read your agreement. You signed that you're liable for lost income if you damage that car. And then you find out, well, wait a minute. What could I have done to not be responsible for that? And it's buy their insurance waiver coverage. So even us as the insurance agents did not know that. We had to learn that the hard way through customers' experiences. So what we do when we analyze those contracts now, we start seeing 3 or 4 different options of insurance coverage available on those contracts. So when you rent a car from Enterprise or Dollar or anybody like that, you need to now, and so do we, need to look at their contracts. We never did that before. And you'll see we're recommending as insurance agents, you buy those coverages now. Buy the increased liability coverage that's now available that didn't used to be. Buy the loss of use coverage, which holds you responsible for the remainder of the life of that vehicle if you damaged it while it's in your possession. So that's new. And that's additional information I wanted to share with you. It gets deeper than this for business owners. A lot of you own a business. A lot of you are spouses of someone who own a business. And a lot of you are self-employed and insure your own personal vehicle on the business policy. Listen carefully if I just addressed any of you. Number 1, it deals with renting cars. Whose name is the insured? Well, that depends on your business. And it depends on if your cars are insured in your business. So a lot of business owners I talk to, they have all their cars insured on their business policy. Why? Because they can write it off. They can write off the expenses because it's cheaper, because it's packaged. Who knows? Whatever the reason, a lot of business owners do not even have one car on a personal policy. I know I'm speaking to a lot of you because I run into it every week. If that's the case, we need to address this issue when you go on vacation, even if it's a business trip. Because when you're going on a trade show trip down in Texas, you get off the airplane and you book the trip as business. I get that. And it's a full write-off and you're going to the trade show, but you rent a vehicle. And here's the problem. You're renting a vehicle down there, and whose name do you sign on the vehicle? The business name? No, it's you, the owner. You're signing your name. You're renting the vehicle. That means you might be renting the vehicle individually. If you're renting the vehicle individually and all your insured vehicles back at home are on the company policy, you don't have an individual policy to extend to the rental car maybe. What about if you do and your spouse doesn't? Or your employees? So I'm looking at this saying, hey, you business owners. And then I get to the point of saying, hey, you business owners, it goes even deeper than that. I'll peel back another layer. These are all things on people telling me, why isn't anybody telling me about this? All those cars on your business policy, this is what I tell a lot of business owners. I'll bet at least one of those is titled in at least your individual name. No, they're not. They say they're all titled in the business. Well, what about your spouse's car? Well, no, they're on. Go check. So they go check and they find out the spouse's car, the husband, somebody's car is titled, oops, yeah, when we replaced the car, we just signed for it in our own name. And I'll say, that might not even be insured now under the business, let alone when you go rent a car. So a lot of this depends on how is the vehicle or how is the property owned that deals on how these things happen. So I do this show today to shed light on issues that may need attention, not to provide answers, but to raise questions so that we know all the different questions that need asked lead to the right answers in your own particular situations. But I'll bet everything I'm bringing up on this show are things that you're saying, hey, why hasn't anybody asked me that before, and why hasn't anybody talked to me about that before? Another area I want to touch on is a brand new law. We just got over a brand new tax law, right? Everybody knows that. We just got through tax season. It was the first tax season with the new Tax Act, and it was a wide sweeping tax act. And right after tax time, Congress proposed another new tax law. It's coined as the Secure Retirement Act, and I've heard it referred to as the Secure Act. It already passed the House, so it only has the Senate to go through. But here's the interesting thing about this act, and then I'll touch on, again, something you may not have been informed about yet, which is why a new act already? It's dealing with retirement accounts only, it appears. But it's important and it will affect all of us. And it will affect all of you. What they're looking at, the House, why are we so concerned about this being just a proposed act? Because both parties sweepingly voted for this act. I think it was like 600-3 or whatever that this act passed by. So they want this act. Both parties want this act. So when it goes through the Senate, will it be amended? Yeah, probably. But it looks like it's coming, so let's brace ourselves. What are they looking for? They're looking to make retirement accounts supposedly more secure. That's 401ks and IRAs for the most part. They're talking about adding the ability to have annuities inside 401k plans as an option. And that's possibly because of all the living benefit riders, the lifetime income riders you can get for secure income for the rest of your life on annuities, and they're not inside 401k. They're not allowed inside 401k plans now. They're really more different type of accounts that you choose from inside your 401k. So that's one category or facet of this act. Another one is they might be changing who can contribute and up to how much, what limits you can contribute into IRAs and 401ks. We'll see how that plays out. But another big one that's coming, I think, it was in the act that got passed through the House, was getting rid of the stretch beneficiary IRA provisions or changing them. The stretch IRA provisions, I'll touch on again, that's if someone dies, other than a spouse, kids inherit, they can inherit the IRA and take distributions over their whole life expectancy, not paying tax on the IRA all at once, but stretching it out over their whole life expectancy, really minimizing the amount of taxes that are ever paid on that IRA. Well, the IRS says, hey, we don't want to have to wait forever to get our tax money on what's trapped inside that IRA. So it looks like they're going to get rid of the stretch beneficiary IRA or subject it to a 10 years maximum. I've heard 5 years maximum, which was actually the old rule, but 10 years maximum now is what I'm seeing in this new law. So brace yourselves is all I'm saying. There's a new act coming. There's a new sheriff in town on the IRAs that looks like it's going to happen. So keep your ear to the ground. It's coming fast. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in to another edition of All Things Financial. We'll be back again next week.